Hey, welcome back. Hope you're doing well. Andy here from Drive Steady, and in this video I'm reviewing the BMW X3M. So listen up, I remember way back when the BMW M division was making two cars, the M3 and the M5. Things have obviously changed and we've got cars like this one, the X3M, which recently got a refresh, got some new looks and some extra power. So let's see if it lives up to the M badge in this review of the BMW X3M. Alright, so let's talk about the exterior and the changes that BMW gave the X3 that also trickled into the M version. Starting off with this color very briefly, it's called Sao Paulo Yellow. It's definitely the bold and highlighter-ish color if you're into that, but I personally would skip it. It seems very bold and out there for an SUV. I think it looks okay on the M3 and the M4. But BMW makes really nice darker colors. They've got a beautiful marina blue, and the traditional sapphire black would also look good on the X3M. Alright, so now detailing some of the changes up front, starting off with the lower portion of the bumper here. I absolutely hate it. I think the pre-refresh looks so much better. This looks like a smiley face. I don't know what the heck they did here. The pre-refresh was so clean, so simple. They just had to tweak it a little bit. And I don't know, they went in a completely different direction. I understand that these vents and things are functional. They're allowing in air for cooling, but I like the pre-refresh better. Now, the headlights are changed. These actually look really cool and are better than the pre-refresh. They're all LED and have a really nice shape to them. And finally, they made the kidney grills a little bigger, but I'm glad to say they still look proportional to the rest of the car, which should be celebrated considering how big BMW's kidney grills are getting nowadays. But one thing I would change about them is this little chrome finishing. This is the base look. If you get the competition package car, it does black these out. If you want to get the base, I'm sure you can go to the aftermarket, get the black kidney grills. They look much better because these kind of clash with the rest of the front end. Alright, so BMW didn't just stop at the exterior, they also gave the engine a slight power bump. So this is the 3-liter twin turbocharged inline 6-cylinder engine. It makes 473 horsepower and 457 pounds-feet of torque. It has a 7,200 RPM redline. It's mated to an 8-speed automatic only, and it drives all 4 wheels, so an all-wheel drive system in the X3M. Now, as far as the power bump goes, the horsepower remained the same, but the torque increased by 13 pounds-feet. If you were to jump up to the competition package, you would get a little bit more horsepower, 503, and the torque is 479. And the torque in the competition pack also went up by 37 pounds-feet of torque. Now, what does this all translate to? 0 to 60 times improved. In the base model like this one, you get 0 to 60 in 4 seconds and 3.7 in the competition package car. So as far as how it's getting to that 0 to 60 time, of course, this is a heavy car. It's about 4,700 pounds. It's with that all-wheel drive system. And BMW is starting this all-wheel drive system thing new, or with the M cars, because M cars have always been rear-wheel drive, and now all of them are all-wheel drive. The difference here in the X3M's all-wheel drive system is you cannot make it a two-wheel drive car like you can in the M3, the M4, the M5, and I believe the M8. This is all-wheel drive. It does give you rear-wheel bias. You do have the ability to turn off the DSC and make it a four-wheel drive sport setting for the all-wheel drive. So they do allow you to have some fun in it, but as you'll see during the driving portion, this is an extremely tight car as far as suspension and handling goes. So that's basically the engine. Now let's go around back and listen to the exhaust. All right, so let me know what you think of the X3M's exhaust note. Not bad, especially in Sport Plus mode. Now, the rear end, BMW also made changes back here. And starting off with the taillights. So these taillights are blacked out. They're all LED, really cool looking, much more aggressive looking than the pre-refresh. And then you've got this spoiler up here. So this spoiler, I'm not sure exactly if it provides any aerodynamic enhancement or any downforce, but it definitely looks cool. It jives very nicely with the rear end. It reminded me a lot of what I saw in the Porsche Macan Turbo. And then down at the bottom, you have a black diffuser around the quad tailpipe exhaust. That's very typical in the M cars. Now let's go into the trunk. So there's 4 ways of opening the trunk. There's a button on the key, there's a button on the interior, you can do the kicking motion, and then there's also the comfort access here on top of the license plate. So you open this thing up and you are greeted with a very decent amount of space. So you can easily fit 2 or 3 larger pieces of luggage in here. You have a spare tire underneath the floor. You also have 12-volt outlets and a shopping cart hanger. And you can even fold down the rear seats for additional cargo space. There's also a cover on top to make sure you've got some privacy back there if you're hiding anything by any chance. But it's a pretty decent amount of space, and this is the benefit of having an M badge on an SUV. You get all this extra storage space, and you also get a almost 500 horsepower SUV and goes 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. All right, so now let's move to the wheels, tires, brakes, and suspension. Starting off with the suspension. So you get adaptive shocks in the X3M. You got 3 modes: Comfort, Sport, and Sport Plus. It's nice that BMW is giving you the adaptive shocks as standard. Now the wheels, you get standard 20-inch wheels. There's 20 inches on all 4 corners. They're by 8 up front and 9.5 in the rear. I was kind of surprised about that 8 up front. I was expecting a wider wheel, especially on an M car like this, but nonetheless, that's just something I noticed. You do have other wheel options in the competition package. You get a wheel that looks practically identical to what you get in the M3 Comp and the M4 Comp. And then you even have the ability to jump up to a 21-inch wheel, but the 20-inch wheel looks pretty proportional to the X3. Now, jumping inside the wheel barrel, you have really big brakes, 15.5-inch rotors up front, 14.5 in the rear, being bitten onto by 4 pistons up front and a single floating piston in the rear. Of course, those calipers are painted in the traditional blue M color, and you've got the M insignia on there. You can get these painted in red or in black. And then the tires, these have the Pirellis 255/45 up front, 265/45 in the rear. So now let's jump onto the inside and I'll show you what it's like in there. All right, so now the interior of the X3M, and as far as sizing goes, I think this is the perfect size. It's not too big, it's not too small. I think it works very well with the M nature of this, because you don't want a humongous car. You want it to be a little nimble, and considering that the X3M is the smallest of the SUVs for the M brand, I think it works really well. Now, this seat, you have 2 options. This is the base seat, and it works very nicely. In the competition model, you get the M Sport seat. It's not the bucket seat like you see in the M3 and the M4, but it is a little bit more aggressive. This one is not bad. You do have several levels of adjustments. You have a manual thigh extension area here. You have adjustable side bolstering, which when fully expanded, hold you in really nicely. I am lacking some shoulder support here, but this is, again, this is the base seat. The M Sport seat will probably have more aggressiveness there. But overall, it's a pretty comfortable seat. Now, the steering wheel, this is the same steering wheel that I saw in the M3, the M4, and the M5. Like those cars, I like the fact that this one also has the M1 and the M2 antler-looking buttons. And the reason for that is because you've got all these modes, steering, suspension, chassis, all this stuff, and it allows you to custom tailor each one of those using this one button. So you push this, you've got everything tailored to a spirited driving mode, and it's really easy. You don't have to go tinker in the infotainment system to individually adjust those things. The gauge cluster is the same that you see in basically every single BMW. It's 12.3 inches, very clean, very easy to read. You do have the ability to change the look of it using the M mode button here in the center console. And then you have the option of getting a panoramic roof on the X3M. This car does not have it. Beyond it just saving some weight, I also don't feel like I feel claustrophobic in here. Sometimes people get panoramic roofs or sunroofs to make it feel a little bit more airy. I've got plenty of headroom, even with the black headliner. I don't feel like the roof is coming down on me whatsoever. All right, so now we come over to this side of the interior and talk about the center section here. Nice 12.3-inch screen. This is the latest infotainment system from BMW. I like BMW's infotainment system a lot because it's simple where you need it to. You can custom tailor it to be simple, but at the same time, you can go in and customize things and geek out if you want to. And what I mean by that is the home screen has this tablet-style layout that are configurable widgets. So you can put your map, your radio, your phone, your modes, your engine data, all this stuff is right there at the tip of your fingertips. There are only certain things that you've got to go into menus to configure, but I like the infotainment system from BMW for this reason. And then you've got a center compartment area with 2 cup holders and a USB outlet. And then this center section here where your transmission selector is completely different, and it's identical to what you see in the M3 and the M4. Bunch of piano black plastic. You've got a red start stop button. You've got a leather piece covering your transmission selector and the transmission aggressiveness and the park button right next to it. Otherwise, you've got a center compartment here, which has a USB Type-C outlet, and it's got a decent amount of cushioning. So that's basically the front. Now let's go to the back and see what it's like back there. All right, so now I'm in the back seat, and I am sitting behind myself. I have more than enough leg room, and I've got more than enough headroom. So it's a pretty comfortable back seat. I could see 2 people fitting in here just fine. Maybe you can squeeze a third adult-sized individual back here as well, but it's probably not going to be very comfortable for a long period of time. You do have 3 anchors for a child seat or a booster seat, so that's always nice. You've got a separate climate control zone here and the ability to adjust it as you please, and 2 USB Type-C outlets for you to plug in your connected device, which I think is a must nowadays considering how connected everybody is and how everybody's got a cell phone, obviously, even some kids now. So having that there is very, very important. And then you've got a armrest that has a fold open cup holder. Otherwise, it's a fairly comfortable back seat. Nothing really special going on here. Pretty standard and basic fare that you would expect in a car of this price range and of this size. So now let's go to the driving portion of the review and see what this X3M drives like. All right, so now the driving portion of the review. As far as visibility, there are 0 issues with visibility in this car. Out the back, I've got great visibility. Out the front, I sit up high. I got a great view out the front. I've got blind spot monitoring around me. I've got great safety features. BMW is really loading these cars up with safety features. Now, this is a base car. This is $69,900 something, and it has 0 options. So this car is actually very well equipped as the base car with the 473 horsepower. I've got a boatload of safety features. I've got blind spot monitoring. I've got a 12.3-inch screen. I've got plenty of features, and I don't really feel like I'm missing anything. Now, you can get the roof, like I said, and you can get heads-up display, which is somewhat helpful and questionable. It's a subjective thing. But otherwise, in the base level trim, you've got more than enough power. Of course, if you want the competition package, that's an extra $7,000. That bumps you up to $503,000. But again, the base level trim with no options is more than well equipped enough, at least for me. Now, let's go ahead and turn this thing on and let's go for a drive. Foot on the brake, start stop button in red. Sounds okay. Sounds okay. Not the best, also not the worst. Exhaust mode is on. Let's go ahead and put the engine in Sport Plus mode, chassis in Sport Plus as well, and steering in Sport, because in Sport Plus mode it gets way too heavy and almost just too artificial. So now let's go ahead and put it in manual shifting mode on the fastest shifting mode, release the parking brake, and let's roll. Let's see what this thing is all about. So as I say the surprising thing about this car is that the suspension is actually very stiff. But beyond the suspension being very stiff, it's very fast at the same time, and the body motions are pretty good for a big SUV. Downshift, transmission is also very good. Speaking of the transmission, it's also very good even when you leave it in D and you don't shift yourself. Yeah, this is a very fast car, and it will surprise you on its capabilities, because this thing can really dance. Ooh, wow. And the thing that surprised me about that steering, about the suspension, is the fact on how stiff it actually is. Even in the comfort mode, this thing is actually pretty stiff. I was expecting it to be like some type of slush box and actually a sellout, but it's the opposite of that. It's got very stiff suspension, and when you put it in the Sport Plus mode, it really controls the body roll very nicely. This is a serious M car, guys. This is not a joke. SUV or not, this is a serious car. And even non-competition pack, this thing flies. Very, very fast car. Let's get a straight line here. Second gear, foot on the floor. Ooh, the exhaust pops are nice in Sport Plus mode. But this is a very, very fast car. And it controls the balance of the chassis with all this weight. The brakes are okay. The brakes are pretty good. I wish the brakes had a little bit more firmness in them. The pedal feels kind of a little squishy, just a little bit. I wish it was a little bit better. But man, this is a serious performance SUV, is really all I can say. When you put it in the Sport Plus mode, in the engine, the chassis, and then the steering and Sport, this thing really transforms into something that I certainly was not expecting. Man, this thing is actually very fun to drive, and it doesn't feel like a sports car because it's got a lot of weight and you sit up high and you don't have that confidence, at least initially, because of those things. But man, this thing is really surprisingly fast and can handle very, very well. Now, I'm going to go ahead and slow down because I've got traffic in front of me. Efficient, comfort, everything else, leave it the way it is. And put it back in D. So when I do this is the surprising part. I was expecting this to completely turn into a slush box, like I said. Basically a sellout. It's like, why is there an M badge on this car anyway? But it's not. This thing actually is rather stiff, and it gives you that sporty feel that you're expecting in a M brand car. Now, is it super stiff to where you can't drive it on a day-to-day basis? I personally don't think so. I think it's okay to drive it on a day-to-day basis, but please check your expectation. If you're like me and you're expecting something to be really soft and cushiony, just because this is an SUV, it's got the M badge on it, and it's maintaining that M badge character of being a sports-oriented car, while still maintaining the ability to drive it on a day-to-day basis as long as you've got your expectations checked. So overall, what is this car? Do I like it? Do I not like it? Quite simply, I really like this car. It does everything well for the most part. I'm really having a hard time trying to pick something out that's bothering me about this car, and I'm not really a big SUV person anyway, so that should tell you that this is actually a really good car. And at $69,000 or $70,000 in this base level trim with no options, this is actually a steal of a car. For $70,000 gets you into the M brand, and it's the right size. You don't have a big monstrous SUV that you're lugging around, and you've got the conveniencies and the benefits of it being an SUV while still it not being a slush box of an SUV, and maintains the M character. So as far as buy, don't buy, this is an absolute buy. If you're thinking about it, honestly, this is a really, really good car. Forget about the M car. It's just a good car. So that's all I've got. If you've got any other questions about the X3M, please send me a comment down below. Let me pull over here. So if you've got any questions about the X3M, please send me a comment down below or a message on Instagram at travesty. But thank you for watching this video. Until next time, drive steady.